Hi. So with this video, I just want to cover some of the considerations for zoos in terms of the animals that they keep. So when we talk about animals in zoos, zoos by definition do have animals in them. But there are arguments both for and against certain kinds of animals being in zoos, aquariums, sanctuaries, and any other facility that has wild animals. Some facilities also have domesticated animals, but usually people have less issue with domestic animals under human care than wild animals under human care. So just looking here at some of the terms that we'll be using in this presentation, right off the bat, like I just mentioned, domesticated, the process of breeding animals to be tame and interact well with people for a specific purpose, usually either a job or for us cultivating them as food. Enrichment refers to new objects, smells, food, etc., given to an animal in rotation to stimulate natural behavior. So again, it's just kind of rotated in and out to give the animals new things to interact with, keep their brain active. Long and short lifespans. So in this case, with the animals that I'm analyzing, I'm labeling long lifespans as ones that are comparable to humans, maybe even a little bit longer in some cases. Short lifespans would be more comparable to domestic cats and dogs, like the late teenage years, basically. Pinioned refers to when specific bones from a bird's wing are removed to prevent flight. This is usually done whenever the bird is young, and even though it's a surgical procedure, usually there doesn't seem to be long-term ramifications with it if it's done while the bird is young, but again, a veterinary professional is usually the best person to administer this. And then finally, social here would refer to an animal that needs other animals to interact with to help it behave naturally. And usually we mean animals within its own species. So we certainly think of human beings as being social, and there are many animals that are no exception. Their natural behaviors involve lots of individuals. So right off the bat, when we look at these different animal profiles, we're going to be talking about some of the challenges zoos have with keeping these animals, but then also in the later parts of each entry, some of the benefits to zoos having these animals. Again, if we're thinking in general, it's beneficial for people to be able to see animals they may not normally see on a day-to-day basis in a zoo, and in general, they get conservation education, but there are also some corner case specific issues for each of the animals that we're analyzing. So we're not looking at it in a general perspective. These are the specific challenges and bonuses for working with these animals. So with elephants, they are social. They have a very long lifespan. They have very large space requirements, expensive to feed, all of these things that are related to being a very large animal. They need training for medical procedures. Again, it's not easy to put an elephant under anesthesia or to do other types of medical procedures with it. So again, training is beneficial in this case. They have human-like intelligence. Again, maybe not the same as an adult human, but pretty darn close. And they do require enrichment to keep their minds active. They're very strong, destructive. They can kill people. They are capable of it. They breed very slowly and produce few offspring. So again, it's hard to maintain their numbers within zoos. They are endangered, both African and Asian elephants, which is what you see pictured here. And sometimes they're taken from what are referred to as culls. Culls are when there's a wildlife management situation where maybe the elephant numbers are too high and they're causing plant life to be devastated in the parts of the world that they're native to. So normally those elephants would be killed, but in these cases, zoos may be able to take them off the hands of a wildlife preserve so they don't have to be killed and they can serve an educational purpose. Elephants are also super charismatic. You'll hear me use that term a lot when we're talking about mammals. People like to see them and they're interested in them, so that's what I mean by charismatic. Also, when we just talk about Asian elephants, like the one seen here below, they have been semi-domesticated in parts of Asia, so interacting with them, with people, there are a lot of practices to draw from. So for marine mammals, we're looking at animals like orcas and dolphins, seals and sea lions and manatees. These are animals that typically are social. Some have very long lifespans, especially when we talk about whales. They have very large space requirements, especially for the water they live in. They need equipment to keep that water clean. They need staff that are trained in swimming and scuba, so again, because of the aquatic environment. They also need training for medical procedures. A lot of marine mammals are very conscious breathers, is kind of the best way to refer to it. If you put them under anesthesia, they won't be able to go through the mental process of breathing while they're under it. So because for them it's more of a conscious experience, you have to, again, use training in this case. Some of them do have human-like intelligence and require enrichment. Most of them are pretty strong and are capable of drowning people. They also breed slowly, produce few offspring, similar to elephants. Some of them are endangered, and sometimes they're rehabilitated from human-related injuries, especially when we look at manatees and dolphins. We see ones that have been injured by boat-related incidents. They are also a very charismatic species, draw lots of folks in. Primates, so again, this is talking about some of our closest relatives as humans. We've got great apes, monkeys, lemurs. They're very social. Some have long lifespans, especially the larger individuals. Many need a high vertical space. Most of them are adept climbers. Diseases transfer very easily to people, so keepers have to be very careful to wear protective equipment whenever they're cleaning in these areas. A lot of them have human-like intelligence, and they do require enrichment. They are very destructive. Apes are capable of killing people. They're very strong. These also breed slowly and tend to produce few offspring. They are endangered, pretty much all primates across the board, and they are sometimes taken from the pet trade or from research situations that they've been involved in. They are also very, very charismatic. Big cats and bears, obviously pretty popular. Usually need to be kept alone, so usually these animals live by themselves, with lions being one major exception since they live in a group of pride. They have relatively short lifespans. A lot of people are surprised to find that these animals usually only live into their teens or early 20s. They like very large areas. They do require enrichment. All of them are capable of killing people when you look at carnivores of this size. Many of them are endangered, and they are sometimes taken from either the pet trade or from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So in those instances, we're talking about orphaned or nuisance animals. Orphaned meaning that their parents are killed off, and this is their only chance at survival if they are raised among people and they're non-releasable in the wild. Or with nuisance animals, they may be ones that have gotten into human territories too many times, and it's hard to keep them out. So they are repurposed into kind of a life within a zoological facility. These animals are also very charismatic. Large hoof stocks, so that's our kind of industry term for four-legged herbivores, and I picked kind of a size variety here. Some of these are not super large like zebra, but again, ones that are relatively large need a lot of space. Most of these animals are social. Some of them need to be kept alone when we look at things like hippos. They are expensive to feed. They do also need training for medical procedures. Lots of these animals are difficult to put under anesthesia, and you usually have to go through a different route. They do require enrichment. The larger ones can definitely kill people, even some of the smaller ones, especially ones with horns. Some of them are endangered, and these are another group that are fairly charismatic. Smaller mammals, and I'm blocking out part of it there, but we've got some Asian small-clawed otters up there at the top. Some of these animals are social. Again, I'm just kind of lumping them all together, but some of them need to be kept alone. These are pretty much all of our mammals we didn't cover already. They do require enrichment. Some of them do breed quickly, and so you have to think about what's going to be the situation with the babies in this case. Some of them are endangered. Some of them are charismatic, especially red pandas. Sloths are things that are very popular right now. And some can be used for hands-on programs, like our little opossum friend here, or in petting areas safely. Parrots are our first bird group that we'll take a look at, and again, I'm blocking out our cockatoo up here at the top, but we're seeing cockatoos, macaws, and a lorikeet there at the bottom. These are animals that are social, especially with mated pairs. They have a very long lifespan, again, something people are surprised to learn sometimes. They need room to fly or to be pinioned. Now, again, pinioning was pretty common with parrots a long time ago. It's becoming less common now, but again, you have to have a large enough area for them to fly if you're choosing to go that route. You have to be careful in medical procedures. You're going to see this across the board with all birds because of the way that they breathe. They're kind of continuous in terms of the way air circulates, and they're very fragile. Again, because of those hollow bones, it makes it very difficult to handle them during medical procedures. They have human-like intelligence. They do require enrichment. Some of them are endangered, and they're sometimes taken from the pet trade. Again, pretty traditional pet in some cases with birds. Smaller ones can be hand-fed by people, so like our lorikeet down there. Here we're looking at large flying birds. Again, we're looking at animals that are social, especially mated pairs, especially when we're talking about swans. Some have long lifespans, especially flamingos, like here in the center. We also have a crane down here. They need either room to fly or to be pinioned. This is the group that you'll see more often pinioned. In order to have a large space for them to walk in, usually they're pinioned, because to cover that space up with a big tarp or any other kind of covering would just be too extensive. Some of them are endangered also. Other birds, again, kind of lumping in what we haven't covered already. Again, very social, especially mated pairs. They need room to fly or to be pinioned, unless you're talking about flightless birds, so like our penguin up here, or ostriches, things like that. Have to be careful, again, in medical procedures. Some have human-like intelligence, especially the crow family. This is a raven located here, but again, members of that family are very intelligent. Some of them are endangered, and again, some of them are taken from the pet trade or human-related injury. This is pretty common with birds of prey, to where you might have one that was injured by a car and taken in but can't be rehabilitated back out. Many birds can also be used in education programs, like our little hawk down there at the bottom. Amphibians and reptiles, many need to be kept alone. Some of them have long lifespans, especially turtles. They're cheap to feed. They don't eat very often, and so it's very inexpensive to feed these animals. That's kind of an upside. They do need heating and lighting equipment to keep them in a proper environment. Amphibians need water filters, like our frog up here. All of them are sensitive to chemical treatments, so it's hard to keep those areas clean. Difficult to do some medical procedures depending on the animal. Venomous snakes, like our cobra here, can harm people. They do breed slowly, but they do create many offspring, kind of a conflict there. Again, you have to think about what's going to happen with the babies when they are there. Some of them are endangered, some are rescued from the pet trade, and many of them can be used in education programs. Fish are another group, especially when we're talking about aquariums. Very social, need equipment to keep water clean and warm, and they're very sensitive to environmental changes. Again, their tank is their whole environment, so you have to regulate every aspect of it. Difficult to do some medical procedures. Again, a lot of things have to be dissolved in water to go through with that. They create many offspring. Some are hard to raise, though, from babies, so new ones are sometimes captured from the wild. It really depends on the fish in question and whether or not you can get food that's small enough for the young fish to eat. Some of these animals are endangered, and some can also be part of a touch tank, like our little bamboo shark down here at the bottom. And then our last group to look at are invertebrates, animals without backbones. Most have short lifespans. Tarantulas are actually kind of an exception, looking at close to 20 years. They're relatively cheap to feed, again, mostly because the quantity of food is so small and they don't have to eat very frequently. You do need equipment to keep the water clean and warm, in the cases of ones that are aquatic, like our starfish here. Sometimes it can be difficult to prevent escapes or stowaways if we're talking about small crawling insects that can get on a keeper's hands when they're working. Medical procedures are almost impossible with this group. Some of them do create many offspring. Some of them are endangered. I know it's weird to think about that with things that we think of as bugs. Some of them are also taken from the pet trade. And many can be used in education programs or touch tanks. So here we've got some cockroaches on an education program potentially. And again, touch tanks would include things like our starfish or a sea urchin. So I hope this gave you some clarification about the types of animals that zoos can consider for keeping within their facility.